Let's take a breath together. So our January theme is getting grounded, going back to the basics, revisiting our understanding of science of mind. And that's pretty much a tradition in Centers for Spiritual Living throughout the universe. We tend to go back to the first 4 chapters in January because it's easy to forget the simplest of things. And since that's what our whole teaching is based on, it behooves us to revisit it periodically. So our talk title this morning is, In the Beginning, God? And that question mark is intentional. Because in the beginning, before there was form, before the Big Bang, before we had atoms and molecules, before we had planets and solar systems, there had to be something that those things all came out of. Because it simply makes no sense that life, form, creation can come out of a void. A void is defined as truly empty space. And so how do you get something from nothing? So there had to be something that existed before form. Unformed source, unformed substance, something had to be there. But what and how? Ernest Holmes called it the thing itself. Now, some of us, depending on our background, take issue with calling the infinite a thing. And some people take issue with calling the infinite God. And some people take issue with calling it. Because, as a rule, we have the privilege and the capacity to take issue with stuff. So we do. Don't make us bad, just makes us us. On page 26 of the Science of Mind, A Philosophy of Faith and a Way of Life book, it says, the study of science of mind is a study of first cause, spirit, mind, or that invisible essence, that ultimate stuff and intelligence from which everything comes, the power back of creation, the thing itself. So what's in a name? I love Juliet Capulet, for those of us who are not clear who that is. That's Romeo's friend. And what she said was, what's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So does it really matter what we call anything? Does it? The word God, for many of us, is a very loaded 3-letter combination. Many, many, many people have been brutalized behind that word. Many people have been celebrated. Many people have had very little experience with the word. And so it becomes a bit of a challenge to use any one word universally. I've shared this before, and I just really love the approach of Judaism. They have 4 letters that really mean nothing. Because to name the infinite is to immediately constrict it. How can we put a finite name on something that is infinite? So they don't, which I really appreciate. And at the same time, we have to figure out how to talk with one another. And so language became a thing. It beat grunts and points at some level. And so we were able to communicate. The challenge that we have with words today is that they mean different things to all of us. They just do. Right? We could do an exercise where I put pretty familiar colloquial phrases up and have everybody write what that means to them, and you'd be amazed at how people think so differently. Just a rolling stone gathers no moss. Okay? So now you have one to play with. Talk to each other after service. See how many different understandings you have of that simple little phrase. Okay? So I invite you to begin to explore. Are you talking about this thing from a place of embracing what it means to you or resisting what it means to somebody else? See, because if we're resisting what it means to somebody else, do we even know what it means to us? Or are we lost in the battle of making somebody else wrong as a way to work out things we take issue with? Something to consider. Ernest Holmes used the word consciousness. And initially, that was great. And then as the word consciousness evolved, it became very convoluted what we're actually talking about. So this next slide is meant very tongue-in-cheek and to be playful. Because if we're conscious, we can become conscious of consciousness that has become conscious of itself as us. But first, we must become conscious that for the most part, we operate quite unconsciously when we're conscious. There's a lot of ways to use that word. And none of those address what Ernest Holmes was talking about as absolute consciousness, source, unformed substance. It's that whatever it is that existed before anything existed. It is that source that everything came out of. We can trace it back to the Big Bang, but what did it come out of? Had to come out of something. What created those things? This concept of God, we are created in its image. The concept of God is personifying it in our image. Okay? It is absolutely a personification of the infinite, of something that is absolutely indefinable. And yet we try to define it. And then, depending on your philosophical, religious, educational background, we define God very differently. So, how in the world do we know what we're talking about when we use it? I invite you, if it works for you, use it. And quit worrying about who doesn't use it. And if it doesn't work for you, don't use it and quit focusing on people who do. It has no impact on you unless you grab a hold of it and put yourself right square in the middle of a Monty Python movie and you're the one in the movie. Put it down and step out. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, because there's room for every belief, because truth be told, none of us know what it is. We can't. There is no way for our finite brain to fully understand the infinite. Our best scientific tools can't even measure it. How are we going to understand it? The nature of infinite is just that. It won't be encapsulated. It won't be restricted. That's how we know it's infinite possibility. That's how we know we've only scratched the surface of what's available to us, because there's more than we can even imagine. I don't know for fact because I wasn't there, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say when the amoebas were oozing around, they weren't worried about becoming a human. Maybe they were, but I don't think so. So what if we just got busy figuring out the infinite as us? And yes, I said as us. We're really comfortable with in us and through us. And if we are made out of it by it, we must be it. We must be it. And I am challenging all of us to begin to stand in that authority. Not that we are all of God, but that all of it is in you every single breath. That is who you are. That is the whole perfect and completeness of you. When we say we're whole, perfect, and complete, we are not talking about our behavior. I get that. So you're saying this behavior is okay? No, I'm not even saying my behavior's okay. Because trust me, I live with me. Some of them are not. And if I forget, I have a beautiful wife to remind me. She actually doesn't do that a lot, but I'm sure she has opportunity that she misses. So what do we do with this stuff? Because all month long, we're going to be taking a look at what it is, where it is, who it is, how it works, what are we doing with it, all of those things. The first step and our call to action this week is to begin to get clear what it is to you. How do you understand it? How do you relate to it? And so the first thing I'm going to encourage you to do this week is spend some time in the silence. Okay? I missed a slide earlier. Rumi says that silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. So I'm encouraging us to move beyond our language. Spend some time in the silence. Allow yourself to recognize it vibrationally through resonance. Allow yourself to feel it, to begin to know its presence as you. And then listen for its name. Instead of you naming it, let it tell you who it is. Because it made you. It's living as you. Perhaps it knows its identity better than you do at a human level. So I invite you to listen. What name quickly will get you to that feeling that you're in that silent place? Because that's what the name is about. What will quickly get you to a sense of its presence. And then begin to explore your words. Because typically, may not happen, but if it does, it's not out of the ordinary. When you begin to embrace a new word, the old words want to argue with you. Okay? Because they've been there for a while and they kind of like their position in your thoughts. All right? So begin to explore the meaning that you have assigned to words. Because they're just agreements, and you get to change your agreements. Okay? Don't worry about what anybody else thinks. If you're really curious, and I invite you to do this more and more, when someone says something to you and you're not clear what they mean by that, ask them. Now, it may go over well, it may not. The first time I looked at Deborah when she said, I love you, and I said, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean when you say you love me? Didn't go over well. Big old buzzkill. You know. And I wanted to say it back, but I honestly didn't know what she meant. I knew what I would mean, but it can be a huge leap to think she means the same thing. And lots of meaningful relationships, of which we have no idea what the meaning is, are based on that kind of conversation. Begin to ask, I really care about you. What do you mean when you say that? I really love you. What do you mean when you say that? And then take it one step further. And when you tell somebody you love them, initiate. And what I mean by that is, you're incredibly important to me. And what I mean by that is. So that's your homework for this week. To begin to play in that realm. Because the one thing that I know that we teach, it is solid. Change your thinking, change your life. And we're going to dive into that next week when we explore the power of thought. Let's take this into prayer. And so what I know is that there is one indefinable, incomprehensible, infinite something. I experience it as loving. I witness its intelligence throughout all of creation. I experience its presence as it resonates within my being. Knowing that it is the very substance, the very source, and the very activity of all life. I know that it is my life, that I am made out of it, by it, to be it. And I know in the wholeness of creation that what is true of me is true of all. And so all of life, the infinite, desiring to experience itself intentionally, purposefully, blissfully, as every element of its creation. And so in that truth, what I know is that all of the divine is fully present in everything, in the spaces in between everything, in that which is seen and that which is unseen. All the magnificence, all the love, all the light, all the peace, all the power is right where we are at every minute. No more looking for or going to find, but simply turning within to know the truth of who we are, and as we do, we know the truth of all. Grateful to know this is how it works. Grateful to be at peace with knowing that I have no idea the totality of, the magnificence of, the infinity of Creator. And grateful to know that it is as close as my breath. Grateful to know that I am engaged in every interaction with it. Grateful, grateful, grateful. And so from this place of gratitude, I release my word, which is it speaking itself as me, right back into itself, where it can never say no and always says yes, even before the words are spoken. And so we let go and we move into looking, seeing, feeling, sensing its completeness in form. And I invite you to join me by making this prayer your own as we anchor it together and say, and so it is.